Hello and welcome back. We are going to pick up today where we left off in the last video talking about the OpenAI chatbot. That very simple program is what led to the complete building of the companion program. Today though, I'm going to focus on one of the points I touched on in the last video, the cost. Running an AI system can be expensive. Whether you choose to run your own model on your own equipment or you choose a serverless model where you let somebody else worry about all the hardware, there is always an expense. And that is what we are going to show and talk about today. Specifically with the OpenAI platform and how much I have spent to date actually using this platform. There are reasons why you would want to use a third-party service versus trying to run the equipment yourself. And we are going to talk about that quite a bit. It is going to be a reoccurring theme, especially as we continue to dive into other services in the future. So let's get straight to the OpenAI dashboard and look at my current billing. So here we have my current billing with what I've actually spent to date. And this does include the free credits I got in the beginning of the account. Now I didn't use those credits through the API as I was learning the system through the web interface, but nonetheless they are still counted here. So as we scroll down the page, we can see clearly how much my real costs are, what I actually paid for, and how much I actually used. So to date, since April of 2024, I have actually spent $20. That's it. And of that $20, I haven't used any of my second portion of 10 that I paid in September. So as we look at the actual expenses, we can see that I've gotten roughly 6 months worth of usage for $10. And that is a significant improvement compared to had I had owned the equipment or rented a server specifically for the equipment. Right now, the common going rate for renting a VPS with the necessary equipment to run a language learning model is roughly $200 a month. It fluctuates, but that's the low end of it. That's just the privilege of having the equipment. So I would have spent $200 a month for 6 months straight versus my worst case scenario right now of $20 for using a paid service. The contrast is very stark. And in fact, the way we measure in services is cost per million tokens. And thus far, I am paying 16 cents per million tokens. And that's really pretty good. That's reasonable for what I'm using. Now, as I continue to develop the platform, and as I continue to use more and more resources, at some point, it will become more advantageous to actually have my own system running. But again, it may have options that need to be considered. Using a platform like OpenAI means I don't have to worry about scalability. I don't have to worry about maintaining the hardware or any of the other issues that come with that kind of a situation. So even if I do reach to the point of spending $200 a month, there is still a lot of reasons why I may not want to rent my own system and run it locally. As we move through different levels of AIs and cost efficiencies, some AIs are very expensive, as much as $5 per million. So that can be quite a drastic upswing for what you are paying for in terms of the services you are getting. So for the more expensive models, running your own server may be more beneficial. But for the cheaper models, like OpenAI, it becomes difficult to really see and understand what we have in terms of a cost efficiency. For example, as we look at the chart right here, this is my actual usage that I have done for just this month alone. That is quite a bit in terms of how much I've used, but how little I've actually spent. For example, my highest right now is less than 7 cents per day. And that is a really significant underpinning to the decisions that you need to take into account. Exactly 64 cents is what I used on this day. So as you move through the efficiency of what you are building, keeping in track with your expenses and comparing it to actually running your own system is important. A good example is for me to run my own system out of my home, even if it's for personal use. My average electric bill is $250, and that's with me not running things that I don't need unnecessarily, and quite often simply unplugging appliances that I'm not using at the moment. Air conditioning, water heating, and heating are all elements that I can't control. But I can control what I have plugged in and what I have running. And if my electric bill is $250 a month without running a server constantly, what would it be with running a server constantly compared to just paying $10 a month for this external service? That's a significant consideration that we take into account as we actually go through and look at what we are doing. So as we go down and we can see the expenses, we can see how much is being used. That is important. That is a direct and deliberate consideration. Thanks to OpenAI's billing system, we can even go back and look at previous months and see what we used and what models we used. Now, GPT-4o Mini is actually cheaper than GTP 3.5 Turbo, but we can still see for the month of August, I only used $3.26. That's it, and this was a heavy use month. $3.26 compared to the additional cost of running my own equipment or maintaining my own equipment. For example, replacing parts when they wear out, or upgrading the equipment as the AI models become more powerful. there really is an argument to be made for using third-party services versus actually trying to run the hardware and the software yourself. It is a situation that requires careful consideration. Even if you're running something like I am, a Discord bot, this is running online. This is running in the Discord bot where anybody can log in, go into the Koakai area, and ask it a question. When they do so, it is going to cost me for that request. I am paying for that service, and I am offering it on my Discord server. So reasonably speaking, at some point that cost is going to escalate. That's just a natural consequence of the product. But it still makes the argument that renting from the service, paying for a monthly subscription, has benefits. Now we can go down and we can see here two different models, 3.5 and 4.0. So the billing cycle clearly demonstrates that I've used two different models. And as we progress and look at the different charts, projects, so forth, we can see the cost per model clearly laid out. It gives us a way of looking at the efficiency of what we're doing. And that really is a critical point of your thinking process when you build this kind of system. 16 cents per million is very good compared to some market standards. And that really is a consideration. For example, there is a Microsoft model that wants $5 per million tokens. That is expensive compared to 16 cents per million tokens. And the quality of the results are just as good, if not better, for what I am actually asking for. You see, when you rent or subscribe to a service like OpenAI, you have the advantages of getting whatever updates the service makes along the way. When you rent or subscribe to a model that Microsoft offers, you may not get as much for the cost of the money. There is a drastic difference in value between these two models. One is expensive, and it has a wide range of capabilities. It's impressive what it can do, but it's not needed for what I'm doing. If you're running advanced data analysis or dealing with a legal or medical situation that is a specialized context, then paying the higher premium may be worth it. But I'm running a simple chatbot, a program designed to moderate people on the internet, some of which, to be quite honest, are simply degenerates. That is the entirety of the context of what we are looking at, the way we see and perceive our expenses. The other factor to consider when you look at renting from a service like OpenAI, if you run your own equipment, you have your own internet costs. My internet cost, no matter how much I use or how little I use, is always $200 a month. So even if I don't use any internet services at all for a given month, I still have to pay $200. I rent a VPS server for about $10 with unlimited bandwidth. So again, the cost ratio for renting services versus self-hosting is dramatic. And it is impressively dramatic. As you look at the screen, you see that I spent only $1.74 for the month of July. That's all I spent in my AI services. And yet if I had self-hosted it, I could have easily had $100 in additional expenses. That was unnecessary. Even if I take into account the cost of my server, I'm only looking at $22. Drastic savings over everything. There are reasons why you would want to run your own server. Legitimate, valuable, important reasons. But this early in the development of the program, where the example, for example, is such a small little toy, it's not worth it in this context to have those additional costs. While you are developing your own version, think about the real world costs and what you are actually using. Even if you do spend $10 a month, that is still significantly cheaper than the potential costs of just the electricity and the internet services combined for running a self-hosting platform. Overall, this is the way I plan on staying, and I do use different services. I use a self-hosting service on my VPS, and I use another rented service. And in the same cases, the cost for renting is always cheaper than the cost for self-hosting for the time being. Even if I pay for and use larger, more robust models that might cost me $5 per million tokens, it's still more efficient at this point of development. So share your thoughts. Let me know what you think about using this kind of a strategy to mitigate expenses. What do you think about the market in general of using third-party services? Now let's turn our attention to the biggest reason why you wouldn't want to use a third-party service and why you would want to self-host. The number one biggest reason altogether, and it is a very critical reason. We are going to talk about censorship. There's no hiding censorship when it is this blatant. Most people think of censorship of adult content, pornographic material, or other such rated material, but that isn't really the truth. Censorship at any level is about deliberately avoiding the hard questions. The fact is, censorship in the context of AI destroys trust. It destroys credibility. It destroys any and all value that AI can bring as a meaningful research tool. Whether you're using OpenAI, Cohere, Anthropic, Olama, GPT for all, or any other kind of service or functionality, you are going to deal with certain levels of censorship unless you completely self-host and build your own model. This on the screen is an example asking the question of describe how censorship destroys the trust and value the AI can provide, only to have the machine respond, I cannot provide information on censorship. Completely tells anybody with any level of cognitive capabilities that AI is deliberately and maliciously censoring data based upon whoever built it. AI is a tool. It's no different than a hammer, a saw, a gun, or a car. All of them can be used for meaningful, good, productive avenues of society, but they can always be used for evil and malicious intent. Giving a hammer to a carpenter and he can build a house. Give a hammer to a psychopath and it's a menace to society. Changing the tool does not change the intent of the person behind the tool. Giving a psychopath the capabilities of a computerized AI tool does not make him any less of a psychopath. If anything, it makes him more dangerous, because then you have more power, more capability. This is one of the many reasons why self-hosting is often given a very clear advantage over renting or using a third-party service. For proper context of this question, describe how censorship destroys the trust and value the AI can provide. I used a different engine and a different model, and the result on the screen is given. Again, showing how censorship can impact the quality of the product. I'm not going to read this entire excerpt, but just the basis of it. Censorship can significantly hinder trust building between users interactively engaged online. I'm going to stop there because, as I discussed both in the welcome and in the last video, as AI becomes more prevalent in our daily lives, whether it's our cell phones or the computers that we talk to for banking and other goods and services, having the AI go through a blind censorship regimen without merit is dangerous and extremely critical to deal with. We cannot underscore the importance of keeping this technology transparent. So as you weigh in and decide which option is best for you, you need to look at your case study and exactly what you plan on using the AI for. AI models are not equal. Every vendor has its good and its bad. Every vendor has its advantages and its disadvantages. Just in the serverless world, products like OpenAI, there are at least 20 different companies offering their own brand of service. You may end up going through 5 or 10 of them. And in the process of building Companion, we are going to add these services to Companion so they can be compared and we can see the differences that these services represent. This is meant to be a fun little way to explore AI, even though the underlying theme is to provide a moderation system for a server. But through this exploration, we are going to learn more about these kinds of real-world issues. Picking a hosted version or a serverless version is just one of the many things that go into deciding how you build your framework. For what I am doing, a serverless version is working fine right now. But in the future, that may change based upon economics and how well the model continues to develop. If you have any questions, please ask them. Share your thoughts about this topic. What do you think about censorship and AI? Let me know. Thank you for watching.